The first blow is soft enough to be deniable. A quilted designer bag, swung with a flick of the wrist at the escalator's landing in a mall that smells of coffee and money. It thuds into Maya Caldwell's shoulder and glances against the small swell of her belly. Security cameras catch the arc. A few shoppers gasp. The woman who swung it, Sloan Mercer, smiles too bright, like a person who's already written the excuse in her head. 3 floors above, a head of security leans toward the monitor, and the world narrows to his sister's face. He has stood through firefights, mortars, courtroom testimonies. But nothing shakes Arun Ari Ratanakosin like watching violence find his family again. M Quartier's polished floors turn every footstep into a question. For Maya, the question is simple. How far can dignity carry you when you want to run? She is 34, pregnant for the first time, and too aware of her reflection in the glass. Taupe dress, flat sandals, the quiet glow that comes when you believe life is about to be gentler. She's leaving an ultrasound appointment, clutching a small printout, where the baby looks like a dark almond inside a moon. Mrs. Caldwell. The voice behind her is textured like smoke. Maya turns into the bright smile. Sloan Mercer. Hair in glossy waves, an expensive linen set the color of fresh bone, sunglasses that seem to grade everyone else. They've met twice at charity things. Sloan always at the edge of Ethan's conversations, too close to call accidental. Ms. Mercer. Maya nods polite, trying to step aside. Cute clinic bag. Sloan tips her designer tote toward Maya's reusable sack. So wholesome. It's the second insult that cuts harder than the bag itself. Sloan leans too close. I thought we could chat, she says, and turns her shoulder in a way that rearranges the geometry of the space, forcing Maya toward the escalator rail. The bag swings. It's small, quick, deliberate, a mouse bite of violence. Pain blooms sharp where the corner catches her. Maya gasps, a sound she hates for its vulnerability, and presses a palm below her ribs, protective by instinct. Watch yourself, Sloan says, an innocence apology painted on a villain's intention. Crowded today. A security guard calls out. Shoppers stop. Sloan flutters. I didn't see... Oh God, are you okay? She reaches, too familiar, and Maya jerks backward. By the time the mall manager arrives, Sloan has constructed a plausible world. She was adjusting her bag. The crowd jostled. She would never. Maya gives her statement in Thai and English. Eyes on the polished floor, one hand wrapped around the ultrasound photo like a talisman. A faint ache radiates from where the bag struck. The baby moves, she thinks so, a tickle like a fish turning, and relief makes her knees weak. 15 minutes later, in a windowless security room that smells of cold air and old coffee, Ari rewinds the footage and watches again. He is Arun Kichai on the payroll, head of security for Caldwell Holdings Asia. He wears the tidy authority of tailored pants and a white shirt with rolled sleeves. He is also a former Marine sergeant who still wakes at 0400 out of habit and scans restaurants for exits without thinking. And on the screen, his sister, his estranged sister, is bent around a belly that might carry the last uncomplicated thing in their lives. He keeps his breathing slow. Zoom, he tells Precha, the junior guard. The mouse whirs. On the second camera angle, the swing is unmistakable. Call the police? Precha asks. Not yet, Ari says. The Marine in him catalogs the field, the mistress, the wife, the millionaire husband whose name is on the building and whose reputation is a stage built of donations and polished interviews. The loyalty conflict lives in his sternum like a splinter. Ethan Caldwell is his employer, his unit. Maya is his blood. He takes a screenshot and texts no one. In another life, he would already be moving. Intervene, shepherd, shield. In this one, he rifles the map of consequences. When he steps into the mall atrium, the scene has softened around Sloan. She is hugging the manager. I'm mortified, she says loudly so the world can witness. Where did she go? I want to apologize. Ari's eyes find Maya near the elevators, the small clinic bag clutched against her. Their gazes meet like an old bridge rediscovered. For a fraction of a second, the past charges the space between them. Rice on their mother's kitchen counter, Ari's duffel the day he left for the Bangkok airport, Maya's silent anger like heat behind glass. Her face goes white, then flushed. He steps forward. He stops. Ma'am, he says in Thai, the voice he uses to de-escalate drunks and grieving investors. Would you like a seat? Some water? She blinks. She looks at his name tag, back to his eyes. I'm fine, she lies. He takes the elevator up with her anyway. In the mirrored interior, the siblings they once were hover like ghosts. We can talk in the clinic, he says softly. No, she says, and the single syllable carries years. When the doors open, she walks away without looking back. The ache blooms again under her ribs as she steps into the Bangkok heat. It is a small ache. The baby is moving. When her phone rings, the screen shows Ethan. For a second, Maya imagines erasing the call and disappearing into the city. She answers. It was an accident, she says before he can ask. I'm fine. Later, in their condo above the Chao Phraya River, Ethan will pace the length of the glass and talk about optics, about Sloan, about settlements, about the need to contain it all. But right now, Maya presses her hand to her belly, closes her eyes, and listens to the river's steady reply. You're not broken, you're carrying. In the control room, Ari watches the feed go dark when the elevators close. He sits for a minute too long. Then he begins the paperwork that will either save his job or end the part of him that knows how to look away. Maya's first memory of Ari is not a face, but a voice telling a story in a mosquito net tent. They slept on the top floor of their father's shop house in Thornbury, the kind of peeling concrete with laundry strung like flags, and Ari made up war epics about two kids whose slingshots could knock corruption out of the sky. He was 5 years older, all elbows and solemn promises. After their father died of a middle-of-the-night heart attack at 49, those promises turned into bills and overtime and shoulders that never relaxed. Their mother, Elisa, kept the shop and her grief like stubborn stains on a floor. Maya studied. Ari shipped out. The day he left for Paris Island, nobody else in their alley even knew where that was. He hugged Maya on the stoop and said, I'll send money. He did. He sent pictures too. Sand, medals, men standing too straight to be boys. Maya got a scholarship to Ohio State, then a graduate job in the corporate communications, and a boyfriend who wore a collared shirt with the ease of someone who'd never been told to lower his gaze. Ethan was older by 9 years, and tender in careful framed ways. He loved the way she translated for him, negotiating Thai bureaucracy with a smile, explaining why dried fish smells like home, why you remove shoes without thinking. He told her she made him braver in rooms full of donors and old money. He kissed her wrists like they were rare. She did not tell him about Ari when they married in a fashionable ceremony at a Sathorn hotel with orchids like clouds and a monk flown in from Chiang Mai for the photograph. She told herself it was protection. Ari had been furious about the wedding date, about her not inviting neighbors, about her darkening the doorway of a clan whose money came with conditions. It's not about them, Ari had said during their last real fight in Elisa's kitchen. It's about you building a house on sand. I'm allowed to want a house, Maya had snapped, and he'd flinched as if she had struck him. She watched him leave that afternoon with a bag that looked too small to hold everything he believed he was. Years blurred. Maya took the Caldwell name like a key and used it to open doors. She curated donors for Ethan's foundation, wrote speeches with the right weight of humility. She believed they were building something clean. If there were whispers about Ethan's appetites, she placed them on a high shelf, the one labeled, "Not my business if my husband is good to me." Then came the delayed periods, the specialists, the quiet grief that grows when your body becomes a project. On the day the clinic called to confirm a heartbeat, Maya had been alone in a grocery aisle looking at mangoes. The world sharpened and softened at once. She whispered it to Ethan in the car, watched his face become a map of emotions, joy, fear, calculation, a flicker of something like relief. It made the mall incident feel like an omen, and Maya hated omens. Ethan hates randomness. He organizes his desk with precision, his days into segments, his reputation into recurring features on glossy pages. In college, he learned that money replaces chaos with soundproofing. In his father's world, money also bought silence, names on buildings, gentle compliance from men who should have told you no. Ethan learned all of that like a second language. The first language he ever owned was hunger, the kind that makes you attentive to power, even when you pretend you're only attentive to kindness. That night after the incident, he pours scotch he doesn't actually like and stands above the river to practice the look he will wear tomorrow. It was an unfortunate misunderstanding, he says to the glass, and his reflection agrees. He will be extra tender with Maya, extra careful, extra correct. He will call Sloan and say, that can't happen again. Which is not quite the same as apology. He will call Ari, a roan he thinks he knows, and say, "I appreciate how you handled it," the way he speaks to men he trusts to understand what isn't said. In a rented condo in Thonglore, Sloan Mercer sits on the edge of a bed that was delivered the day she learned the code to the elevator. She drops the bag she used like a weapon onto the floor. She didn't mean to connect, only to startle, to make a dent in Maya's day. The satisfying thud had surprised her too. What surprised her more was the flash of guilt that followed. She has been a mistress before in cities that respect performance, but never to someone visibly pregnant. Even in her own private ranking of sin, that felt like hiking a new altitude. Still, a job is a job. She opens a hidden folder on her phone and scrolls through a contract phrased like a PR retainer and paid by a shell company that belongs to Anuvat Lim, an old Bangkok titan who plays golf with a fury that exposes his teeth. The job is straightforward. Destabilize Ethan Caldwell. Nudge the weakness where image and appetite intersect. Gather material. Be the material, if necessary. Sloan knows the stakes, her brother's debts, the man who made the offer twisting a gold ring on his finger while not looking at her face. She has always snuck by, survived by calibrating male attention like a safecracker. Tonight she rubs the tender bruise on her forearm, the guard's grip when he'd stepped in for a second, and thinks, for the first time, of leaving the country. Ari, alone in his apartment above a 7-Eleven, prints a photo that is both evidence and wound. He places it in a folder labeled Incidents. He adds a second page, 2 names and a question mark between them. He has lied about 1,000 small things in his life since he became a professional watcher. He is good at it. It feels lately like he's painting over rot. He sits on his bed on the floor, closes his eyes, and prays to a god he hasn't bothered in years. Let my sister keep what she's finally allowed herself to want. He adds, because he isn't a liar when it comes to the private math of love, let me keep my job long enough to protect her, even if she never looks me in the eyes again. The river slides past all of them, indifferent and faithful. Sloan wasn't born for Bangkok. She was born for cities that reinvent you by lunch. LA taught her to market sincerity. Hong Kong taught her speed. Bangkok, though, Bangkok gives you a slower clock and a culture of secrecy so refined it feels like art. She can be many things here without ever risking the one she keeps for herself. A girl from a motel off the interstate who once learned you can cross a continent with 2 outfits and a good lie. She met Ethan at an art auction where giant canvases leaned like lazy gods and the wine was poured like a favor. She wasn't seeking him, she was seeking a face the internet would care about. He walked up to the installation where she'd stationed herself, a white room with a circle of black stones, and asked if she believed the artist, or only wanted to be near the idea of belief. She turned, smiled, and said, "Aren't those the same thing?" He liked her. More importantly, he let her like him, which is a sexier power. She didn't plan to be photographed holding his elbow. That happened to them like weather. The first time he asked her to meet at an apartment not his own, she filed away the address. When he gave her the building's private elevator code, she tested how it felt in her mouth like a delicious swear. No one had to tell her why men like Ethan collect women like her. They want mirrors that flatter, hands that applaud silently. They also want confessionals. Sloan is very good at listening until men forget they're talking. Mostly what Ethan told her was the truth he believed, that he loves Maya, that the world expects a man like him to define himself with conquest, that he thinks he can be both storylines and pay for the difference with donations. The other truth lived in the way his hand would tighten around her wrist when the conversation turned to losing control. A father who once disappeared for 3 days on a bender and returned with a partnership agreement. The way money is both seatbelt and trap. The way the press smiles while collecting your blood in tiny vials. By the time Anuvat Lim approached Sloan with the retainer contract, his voice mild, eyes measuring, she already knew where Ethan was soft. She had not expected to feel soft herself, not for Maya. But pregnancy simplifies people. It puts a weather halo around them. Do not strike here. So she planned to be careful, to agitate, not injure. The bag swing came from a different part of her, a frightened, reactive corner that had learned, as a kid, to hit first when a foster brother reached the bottom bunk ladder. The moment she felt the weight thud, shame followed, then calculation. She folded apology into strategy because she has no budget for mistakes. In the days after the incident, Sloan phones it in with Ethan, warm but not needy, contrite without despair. She sends a basket to Maya with an overpriced baby blanket and a note in tidy script. "I'm so sorry. It was clumsy of me. If you'd like coffee, I'd love to apologize properly." Maya puts the basket on the kitchen counter and stares at it, as if it might reveal the physics of her life. Ethan tells her to throw it away. She doesn't. Partly because she loathes waste, partly because she can't decide whether to be furious that Sloan sent it, or furious that some part of her wants to talk to the woman and understand the engine behind her eyes. Ari watches. He has cameras everywhere that Ethan paid for. Lobbies, corridors, parking garages, plus human cameras. Receptionists who tell him what time Sloan arrives. Drivers who mention that Mr. Caldwell's schedule includes personal time. Ari logs everything in a way that would look obsessive to anyone who didn't build survival out of patterns. He does not tell Maya he is her shadow. He does not tell Ethan he speaks decent English because of a sister who used to tape vocabulary lists above their sink. He tells himself the ethical thing is to do the most good with the least noise. The Marine thing in him translates, accomplish the objective quietly. When he visits Elisa on a Sunday afternoon, he doesn't mention the mall. She's making nam preek on her balcony, the chili paste that perfumed his childhood with the smell of consequences. She scolds him for losing weight. He kisses her cheek and carries her groceries. When she asks about Maya, her face a sturdy map of both hope and pride, he says, "She is busy, the baby's good." He builds that sentence with tiny bricks and stands behind it like a wall. That night, his phone buzzes with an anonymous number. The message is a screenshot of the mall footage taken from a different angle than his, closer, crisper, as if a journalist had already made a rough cut. The text reads, "How much is this worth to your boss?" And below, "How much to your sister?" Ari exhales. The rules adjust. He texts back, "Who is this?" He receives a location pin for a bar in Siloam and a time 20 minutes from now. He puts on a jacket that can hold a small concealed thing he doesn't carry anymore, checks the stairs without thinking, says a prayer in the elevator because the habit has returned and brought a friend called Dread. The bar smells like spilled beer and cologne. The man at the corner table wears a logoless polo, the uniform of someone who believes in anonymity and tips poorly. He smiles with his mouth only. "You're the head of security," he says, and Ari sits in such a way that no one can stand behind him. "We can protect you from a scandal," the man says. "Or we can sell this to someone who enjoys fire." Ari likes simple math. How much? For you, a bargain. The man names a number that makes clear the conversation isn't about money. It's about testing Ari's appetite for fear. Or you can trade favors. What favors? Small things, access to schedules, a blind corner where there should be light. Ari stands. The man shrugs. "Then tell your boss to be nicer to his friends." He slides the screenshot across the table. Accidents happen. Ari pockets the paper as if it's a talisman. He walks into the hot night and texts a person he has not texted since he left the service. A Marine buddy now in the joint U.S. military advisory group, the sort of man who hates corruption like a food poisoning. "Need a background on Anuvat Lim," he types, and then deletes the name and writes, "A Bangkok businessman with too many yachts." The reply is quick. "Been watching him already," the friend writes. "Why?" Ari writes the truth. "Because I like my sister alive." The thing about being the watcher is that eventually you start to wonder who is watching you. Ari feels the line tug tighter. The men at the bar weren't offering a deal. They were measuring the room. He layers his day in countermeasures, different routes to work, a second phone, a careful smile for the receptionist, who always looks like she could assassinate you with office supplies. He keeps his distance from Maya. He learns through the grapevine that is not a vine but a careful trellis he's trained, that she meets with a prenatal therapist named Nid. She goes on slow walks at dusk along the river with a hand at her back as if steadying an invisible shelf. She still refuses the driver most days. Ari itches to tell her to accept the car, the bodyguard, the route cleared of minor gods. He doesn't. She is a person, not a scene. Ethan calls Ari to his office. "Arun," he says, that practiced vowel stretching in a way Americans believe sounds friendly. "Walk me through M. Cordier." Ari does, sparing adjectives. He places a printed report on the desk, like a chess move. Ethan reads, nods, rests a finger on the line where it is clear the bag was aimed, not accidental. He does not ask who the woman was. He knows. Any press inquiries? Ethan asks. A blogger asked, Ari says. We did not respond. Good, Ethan says, and what he means is, thank you for keeping the perimeter of my mistakes tidy. Mrs. Caldwell, Maya, how is she? Resting, Ari says, and the name fits wrong in his mouth. He imagines telling Ethan, she volunteered in our neighborhood temple after school and bought me Coke with the coins she stole from herself. He tells himself where to store this image. He stores it. The woman, Ms. Mercer. Ethan begins, then stops. I'll handle it. Yes, sir, Ari says, and it feels like telling a storm to be polite. After work, he follows Sloan at a distance that looks like coincidence. She goes to a Pilates class with mirrors everywhere, and men who wear fitted shirts when they stretch. She meets later with a woman at a rooftop bar, Lena Fazuk, Caldwell Holdings CFO, her hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun that screams competence and secrets. Ari listens from 2 tables away. All he can hear is laughter without warmth. A man steps into the bar, pauses for the crowd to notice, and then lets them notice he doesn't care. Anuvat Lim. He's older than his photos, which means the photos are lying, or he is. He nods once at Lena. She gives a microscopic shake of her head. Sloan touches her straw to her lips without drinking. Ari snaps a photo that won't matter in a court, but might matter later in a confession. He texts his Marine friend again. Working theory. Lena and Anuvat have a thing. Does your file include her? The reply takes longer. When it comes, it arrives with the weight of paperwork. She's clean in the official ways, but there's a private account that doesn't match her salary. If she's smart, it's not in her name. Ari breathes in, out. They are building a plot on top of an accident, or the accident was a match to show the shape of the haystack. Sloan, for her part, thinks she is in control because she always has been. She makes an appointment at the clinic where Maya goes, not because she needs anything, but because she wants to watch Maya walking toward another kind of future. She sits in the waiting room with a magazine she does not read and studies the art on the walls. Soft pastels, babies that look like moons, aspirations painted like weather. Maya arrives with a quiet, contained energy, like the center of a storm. Sloan stands. I'm sorry, she says, because the script matters. I shouldn't have... Maya looks at the bag, then at Sloan's face. Why, she says simply. Sloan has a prepared confession about jealousy in men, about being a cliché, about therapy. None of it fits. The truth that arrives instead surprises her. Because I was afraid you had something I never learned how to keep, she says. Maya blinks. The therapist calls her name. She says, I accept the apology because acceptance is cheaper than rage and kinder to the baby. Then she goes inside and tells Nid about dreams where rooms have no doors. When she comes out, Sloan is gone, but her perfume hangs in the air the way a bad idea lingers after a party. That night, Ethan takes Maya to dinner at Nam, all tasting menus and small miracles. He is attentive, makes toasts, mentions the way her hair is growing faster. When she goes to the restroom, he texts Sloan, not now, later. He puts the phone away with a breath he thinks is invisible. Maya watches him when she returns and sees a man trying very hard. She decides to try very hard also. It feels like 2 people rowing a boat in slightly different rhythms, forward motion, water splashing different sides. On the way home, their driver brakes too hard and a motorcycle whips past, leaving a streak of adrenaline. Ari watches it from a monitor 4 blocks away. He calls the driver later, quietly, and says, if that bike appears again, call me first. The driver says, sir, and does not ask why his head of security sounds like a big brother who knows the names of streets from another life. The watcher watches. The city holds its breath and then exhales and pretends it has not. People like Ethan believe they're the protagonists even when they plan to be generous. He sits at his desk and constructs the story he will tell the board, the press, himself. Maya is good. Sloan is a mistake. Aaron is an asset. He doesn't see how these sentences are mirrors aimed slightly off, reflecting only the parts he has lit. His father, Mitchell Caldwell, once told him the difference between sin and scandal is a good accountant. Mitchell is ashes scattered in Colorado and a plaque in a hospital lobby. Ethan doesn't want to be his father. He also does not want to be smaller than his father. He learned young that distance looks like strength if you hold it right. He meets Lena, his CFO, to discuss the Bangkok expansion. She is precise in speech and posture. If she is corrupt, it does not show up as sloppiness. It would show up as excellence directed at the wrong target. He watches the way she examines term sheets, the way she never laughs at his jokes. He trusts her because she makes him feel like a student again. Security insulted one of our friends, she says lightly, and he knows she means Anuvat. They were uncooperative. They followed protocol, he says. He likes the slap of that word. If I bend the rules here, where do we stop bending? She raises an eyebrow. That's an inspiring line, she says. What's the policy on inspiring lines when it's your personal life? He smiles without teeth. The policy is, we don't discuss my personal life at work. She nods. Of course. The policy is also that we don't create additional liabilities. She means manage Sloan. She means men like Anuvat prefer frictionless corridors. She means I know. He wonders how much she knows, and then, because the worst-case scenario is a muscle he exercises too often, he thinks maybe she knows more about him than he knows about himself. At home, he runs his hand over Maya's shoulder blades and whispers, I'm sorry. He is, in the way that apologies become walls you build to lean against. He breathes in her hair and promises himself he will never be careless again. The promise is sincere in the moment. Sincerity is a resource he spends like currency. He will have to earn more of it somewhere. He texts Sloan when Maya goes to sleep. The message reads, I need space. Sloan replies, I need honesty. He does not answer. The problem with equations is that variables move. Ethan calculates a safe angle and, in doing so, misses the way danger is human-shaped. The motorcycle appears again outside their building, the rider pretending to check his phone. Ari instructs the night guard to take a photo. The rider speeds off. A blogger posts a blind item. Bangkok's favorite do-gooder caught between a halo and a habit. The photo is not clear enough to be fatal, but it is clear enough to be real. Ethan calls Ari in past midnight, points at the screen. I thought we controlled this, he says, meaning both the building and life. You can't control a person like a door, Ari says, and instantly regrets the metaphor. Don't be poetic, Ethan snaps. Then, softer, find out who is feeding this. Ari nods. He wonders if honesty is ever desired at the top of the building, or if everyone prefers their lies to come with turned-down service and chocolate on the pillow. He goes home and unrolls his old map of Bangkok from before the SkyTrain cut the city into lines. He marks dots that feel like pressure points. The blogger's favorite coffee shop, Sloan's gym, Lena's condo, Anuvat's club. He draws lines with a pencil, the way he once sketched out patrol routes, and sees the overlap he was hoping not to see. In the morning, Maya wakes to the smell of toast and a husband making plans that include breathing exercises, a baby moon, a new secure car. She nods because all of this is love. She also writes a list in her head. Buy fresh ginger for morning sickness. Email Nid, call her mother. She pauses before the last one. The word call becomes maybe. She hates the grammar of estrangement. It turns verbs into suggestions. She texts Ari. Not you, she writes and deletes. Then, thank you for the elevator that day, even if we didn't speak. She deletes that too. She sets down her phone and picks up the ultrasound. The baby is a mystery with a crown ridge. She whispers its nickname, Do, star. The name glows in the small quiet of the condo like a light you can place on a shelf and trust. The gala for the Caldwell Foundation feels like a victory lap in silk. Sponsors wear their donations like tailored tuxes. The stage is designed to look like generosity isn't design. The topic is maternal health across rural Thailand, an irony that Maya tastes like a bitter herb, but she smiles through it because the programs they fund are not lies. Money, once in motion toward good, is a kindness even if its source is messy. Ari stands at the back of the ballroom, an earpiece whispering the choreography of safety. His men are placed, exits checked. He scanned the guest list twice. Sloan is not on it. Anuvat is. Lena is at Ethan's right hand. Maya is in a gown the color of late mango and has never looked more certain of her body. Ethan's speech is elegant and precise. He talks about partnerships and long-term commitments, about how the first cry of a baby is a song every society must learn to honor. Ari watches the small tremor in Ethan's hand that only shows when he holds a paper he has memorized anyway. He wonders who Ethan is when the microphones are off and whether that man is burrowed inside the speech trying to dig out. Halfway through the program, the fire alarm blips once and stops. No one else notices. Ari stiffens. He touches his ear. "Preacha?" "It's false trip," Preacha says. "Basement door ajar." "Check," Ari says. His eyes move to Maya. She is laughing in a way that releases something in his spine. For 1 second, he is only a brother. A woman slides into the room, half hidden in a hotel staff jacket that's not quite convincing. Sloan. Ari moves before he thinks, angling his body between her and the stage. She sees him, and her face arranges itself into defiance. "I'm here to apologize," she says under the music's cover. "This is not the time," Ari says, and would add, "or the place, but there is no need to be cliché." She leans in, drops the argument. "He thinks I'm a problem," she says, nodding toward Ethan. But he doesn't see the other problem. What other problem? He keeps his face unreadable, the way training taught him. Lena, and not only Lena. She glances outward to the room that feels suddenly porous. "I thought I was dancing with one partner. Turns out it's a crowd." "Proof?" Ari asks. "Proof is coming," she says, and for once the confidence looks like fear. Don't let that alarm be a rehearsal. The lights flicker, not a cut, but a breath. When they steady, Lena is on stage whispering something to Ethan, and Ethan nods, smile fixed. Ari taps his earpiece. "Update? Basement door still ajar," Preacha says. "Camera 7 down. Tech says power surge." "Post someone at the stairwell," Ari orders. He moves along the wall to a service door, opens it, and finds the hinge unscrewed, the screw heads neat in a little row, like soldiers resigned to leave. He descends 2 steps. A shadow moves below, the shape of a person who knows how to be a shadow. Ari follows the shape into the bowels of the hotel, past storage that smells like bleach and narratives that smell like too much perfume. He thinks he is alone until he isn't. 2 men step from opposite corners. They don't look like hotel staff. They don't look like men who came to listen to speeches. Their hands are empty, which is only a little better than the alternative. "Evening," Ari says, because courtesy is a weapon too. "Wrong door," one man says. "I think you have my screw," Ari replies, and then the room compresses. He moves like the Marine he won't admit still lives inside his shoes. Knee, elbow, pivot, the thud of someone surprised to meet a floor. He makes it messy on purpose. Messy scares amateurs. The second man reaches for something in his waistband. Ari knocks him into a rolling cart. He hears footsteps beyond the far door and chooses not to follow. The gala upstairs is the real target if the downstairs is a decoy. He runs back to the ballroom. On stage, Ethan has switched to thanking the wives. Maya's smile is steady enough to be mistaken for joy. Ari scans the crowd and sees a blogger he recognizes lifting his phone. Sloan slips to the back and nearly collides with Maya near the stage steps. For a moment that will live in too many people's heads, they stand within arm's reach. Sloan opens her mouth. Maya, who has spent weeks composing sentences that weighed more than she could carry, says quietly, "If you need to tell me something, tell me the truth." Sloan's gaze flicks to Lena, then to Ethan. "He isn't careful," she says, "and some people are counting on that." "Are you one of them?" Maya asks. Sloan's mouth trembles and is then still. "Not anymore." A flash pops. The blogger caught the almost touch, the almost confession. Tomorrow, the caption will write itself. Tonight, Ari positions himself between camera and scandal, a human filter. After the final course, dessert like a geometry problem, Ethan escorts Maya to the car. The night is wet heat, Bangkok exhaling. Ari surprises himself by opening the door, an old habit he rarely indulges. He meets Maya's eyes. He sees the recognition there, the knowledge knitting itself. He's not ready, but ready is a luxury. "Thank you," she says, and it is both small and everything. Ethan watches the exchange, confused by a feeling he mislabels as irritation. He will later remember this moment as the pivot when his story stopped obeying him. Bangkok's storm season arrives with evening tempests that clean the air. On the night the roof of everything peels back, rain is a drum on glass. Maya decides to visit her mother without telling Ethan. She takes a cab, a simple one, because she misses the sensation of being one anonymous person among millions. She texts Nid, "Going to see my mother, feeling brave and brittle." Nid responds with a heart. A motorcycle tails the cab for 4 blocks. Ari sees it on a feed he shouldn't be watching off hours. He texts the driver's plate to his team. The bike turns left toward Thornbury. Ari grabs his keys. He can write up the reprimand for himself later. At Elisa's door, Maya hesitates and then knocks with the rhythm from childhood. Elisa opens, a surprised laugh turning into a hug that makes the parts of Maya she thought permanently tense go soft like good bread. They sit. They eat guava with chili salt. They don't talk about the man Maya married or the money that bought the new washing machine. They talk about the baby's kicks, the way mangoes taste different now, the blue shirt Ari left here once that still smells like a myth. Do you talk to him? Maya asks. Sometimes, Elisa says. He pretends he is busier than he is. Men like to be the ones who go into danger so they can come back heroes. Maya laughs, then cries. Elisa holds her hand. You will have to choose the life that is most honest, she says in Thai. The kind of advice that sounds like a proverb because it refuses to be easy. Outside, Ari parks badly and runs. He stops 3 doors down so as not to look like a man who runs. The motorcycle idles across the street, the driver in a cheap raincoat. Ari walks past as if uninterested. The bike pulls away slow, a promise of later. Inside the apartment stairwell, he rehearses a sentence he has never said in a suit. Hello, Maya. He knocks. Elisa opens. For a second, every story they wrote about him being gone dissolves. Aaron, she says, the name like a prayer. Stop standing in the rain. You look like a sad TV actor. Maya rises. There is a pause, and then the pause bursts. What are you doing here? She asks, formal in a way no sibling uses except at funerals and weddings. Watching, he says. Bad habit. How long? Maya's eyes go narrow with the kind of mathematician's focus she brings to emotions. Since the mall, he says. Before, sometimes. Don't be angry. Or be if you need to. She is both. It takes her 2 breaths to choose the one that allows the second conversation. Why didn't you tell me? I thought you didn't want me, he says without flinching. That's not true, she says. I wanted you to be who I remembered. He nods. That's not fair to either of us. Elisa puts tea on the table with the decisive sound of a spoon against ceramic. Eat something while you 2 practice being adults, she says. There is relief in saying the things that hover. They talk about their father's shop, about the small meanness of rich people and the small meanness of the poor carefully compared, about the baby, whom Ari stubbornly calls Dao, as if the nickname arrived directly in his pocket. They do not talk about Ethan until Maya says, he doesn't know you're my brother. I figured, Ari says. Why didn't you tell him? Because then I would have to keep telling him other things, Ari says, and because I wanted to move in my own shadow until I knew where the light was. Maya has no response to that, except the feeling inside her chest that maybe the world will not come apart if she lets people come closer. When she leaves to use the bathroom, Ari says to Elisa, there's a motorcycle following. Elisa swats his arm with a dishcloth. Then go scare it, she says. You're good at scaring things that need scaring. He goes down the stairs and into a wet night that smells of electricity. The bike is 2 blocks away under a streetlight, the rider pretending to be on a call. Ari approaches from the side that doesn't read as confrontation, which is a trick and also wisdom. Evening, he says. Nice weather for a stakeout. The rider startles, then overcorrects into bravado. You have the wrong idea, he says. I usually do, Ari replies, smiling. Next time, bring friends. It's lonely to watch alone. He takes a photo. The rider curses, guns the engine, disappears. It's a small victory that tells him nothing he didn't already suspect. Someone wants to measure the rhythm of Maya's life. When he returns upstairs, Ethan is in the doorway, rain on his shoulders, anger on his face like a mask he hasn't yet decided to remove. He takes in Ari's presence, the familiarity between Ari and Elisa, the way Maya's face looks more open here than anywhere he's seen her lately. What, he says, the word flat dangerous, is my head of security doing in my mother-in-law's living room? The question is a knife. The answer is a lifeline. Ari chooses the lifeline, which is also a knife. I'm Maya's brother, he says. Arun Radhanakosan, Ari. Silence is an organism. It fills the room, eats the oxygen, waits. Ethan laughs, incredulous, unprepared. You what? My brother, Maya says, standing. From before any of this. She gestures around the room and toward the city and to the idea of the life they built out of glass and press releases. Ethan looks at Ari as if the man has just grown a second head. He recalibrates. He chooses an old weapon. Control. And you thought not telling me was, what, an experiment? A test? I thought my family could be mine, Maya says. and she is suddenly not apologizing for it. Ethan's mouth opens, closes. He is a man with a prepared line who has stumbled into the wrong scene. He looks at Elisa, whose face says, "I have seen men like you and the ones before you." Ari steps in, gentle. "Mr. Caldwell," he says, "let me be clear. My personal connection to Mrs. Caldwell has not interfered with my job. It has, however, made me invested in a way you should be grateful for." "And what else are you not telling me, Ari?" Ethan asks. He uses the name like he's tasting it for poison. "I'm not telling you that your CFO is in bed with your enemy," Ari says, so softly only the people in this small room can hear. "And I'm not telling you that your mistress is trying to switch sides because she realized she did not like the taste of the game." He unrolls photo after photo on Elisa's table. "But I can, because the storm is here. It is, outside and in. There's a rhythm to a storm. Jolt, deluge, the moment it decides to be merciful. The jolt arrives with a leak of financial documents to a journalist who knows how to follow numbers better than names. The deluge arrives when the blogger posts a clear video of Sloan leaving Lena's condo at midnight, and then, later, another angle catching Lena entering Anuvat's club. Ethan's board calls, donors call, the press calls. There is the sensation of being inside a phone that won't stop ringing. Ethan's first reflex is to deny. His second is to find the nearest enemy and press until it breaks. "Why didn't you tell me she was your sister?" he demands of Ari in his office. Blinds open to the river, like he needs the city to witness his righteousness. "Because you didn't ask who I was when you hired me," Ari says. "You asked whether I could make you safer." "And did you?" Ethan spits. "I am trying," Ari says, the verb present continuous because he can't promise outcomes. "You put me in a position where you might have to acknowledge that your wife has a life beyond you," Ari says, and he says it gently because it will land like a brick no matter the tone. Maya watches the men she loves draw lines. She is tired of being an object that men place between their sentences. She decides to be subject. She goes to Sloan's condo alone, no driver, no guard. She knocks and Sloan opens wearing sincerity like a robe. "I don't want absolution," Sloan says, which is what people say when actually they do. "I'm not here to absolve you," Maya says. "I'm here to ask you to stop being used." Sloan grips the doorframe. "I wanted to be in control," she says, which is either the start of a confession or an excuse. "Then stop working for Anuvat," Maya says. "Help me fix what you helped break." "Why would you trust me?" Sloan asks. And the question is fair. "I don't," Maya says. "I trust myself to survive you." Then, because redemption is a currency more powerful than money, she adds, "And I believe people can change when the story becomes too heavy to carry." Sloan rubs her eyes. "He threatened my brother," she says. "He still could. I got in trade too deep." "We can protect him," Maya says, and hears herself using a "we" that includes a man she's furious with, and another she is learning to love again, and a mother with a dishcloth, and a city that sometimes shows up for its own. Sloan nods once, twice. "I'll testify," she says, and the word feels like fresh air. "I have messages." They go to Ari because everything eventually must. He calls his Marine friend and another friend who is a cop who never stopped believing a clean cop is possible. They compile a file that's part gossip, part ledger, part digital hair. Lena meets them in a glass-walled conference room and sits like a person who knows the worth of posture. "I didn't steal," she says. "I reallocated." "To who?" Ethan asks. "To the program that will survive you," she says. "You think philanthropy is a hobby. For some of us, it is the only way to clean our hands." It's almost a good speech. It nearly convinces. It doesn't explain her nights at Anuvat's club. "Why him?" Maya asks. Lena looks at her with something like respect. "Because he understands the market. He said he would bring the foundation into adulthood. He said we didn't need Ethan." Ethan flinches as if a mirror has shattered without warning. "You did this because you're tired of me?" he says, half to Lena, half to the city. It is an absurd question that is also raw. Lena is either too honest or too tired to lie. "Because you think money is a wand," she says, "and because you replaced accountability with charm. I wanted to build something that didn't depend on whether you woke up today wanting to be generous." Ethan stands. He walks to the window. He realizes he is looking at a version of himself he built carefully, and that version left the door unlatched. He hears dimly his father's voice telling him to control the narrative. He turns away from that ghost. "Fine," he says. "Bring in the police. Bring in the reporters. Bring in everyone. If we're going to get clean, we do it with the lights on. He means it in the moment. He has to keep meaning it, which is the work. What follows is noisy and then strangely quiet. The police arrest 3 men whose names will never trend. The journalist publishes a piece that spares no one, not even the philanthropic projects with pretty names. Anuvat does not go down in a blaze. He steps back, letting other men burn. Lena resigns before she can be pushed. Sloan sits in a government office with a blotter that looks left over from a different decade and tells the truth in a voice that shakes only once. Maya takes a leave from the foundation. She visits rural clinics without a photographer. She texts Ari silly questions about whether her baby will prefer Luke Chup or mango sticky rice. Ari replies like he is being paid by a committee of ants. Ethan moves into a serviced apartment while they decide whether the marriage is a bridge or a rope. He sends Maya playlists. He shows up at Elisa's with a bag of rambutan and no press. He takes a walk along the river with Ari. He says, "I'm sorry, not like a wall this time, but like a floor he is willing to lie down on and understand." "You're still my boss," Ari says. "Only if you want to be," Ethan replies. "I want to be my sister's brother," Ari says. And they stand in that new weather for a while. Months pass in the slow way that feels like mercy. The city stays itself, traffic like a daily argument, rain like urgent advice, food like a religion you don't have to declare. Maya's belly becomes a geography everyone wants to read. Elisa rubs coconut oil on the skin and talks to the baby like an overeager radio host. Ari installs another camera and pretends he is not becoming superstitious. When labor starts, it is a quiet cramp that could be a lie. Then it is the truth. They move through a Bangkok night that has chosen not to storm. In the hospital room, Maya discovers she can be both scared and brave without those qualities accusing each other. Ethan stands at her right hand. Ari stands at her left. Sloan sits in the waiting room with Elisa, a bouquet on her lap that she keeps rearranging like it might make a different outcome if she gets the stems right. The baby arrives with the first light of morning, a cry that sounds like an opinion and a surrender. She is small and furious and perfect and immediately her own person. They name her Dao, Star, because of the nickname that preceded her, because of hope. Ethan cries in a way that strips him. He says, "I will not be my father," and the nurses pretend not to hear promises because they have learned to catalog only results. Ari holds Dao like she is an order he will always follow. Maya watches them all and feels a kind of love that isn't about deserving, but about choosing, and then choosing again. In the weeks after, the city gifts them small graces. A fruit seller who refuses money, a neighbor who brings a fan when the power flickers, a taxi driver who talks about his grandchildren with tears and jokes. Sloan introduces Daw to the idea of naps and becomes surprisingly competent about bottles. She leaves Bangkok a month later for Singapore, not running this time, but walking toward a job that requires her honesty at last. They meet for coffee before she goes. "I can't undo the bag," Sloan says. "No," Maya agrees. "But you put something else in my hands." They hug like people who have seen each other's least flattering light and decided to use it wisely. Lena disappears from public view and shows up months later as a consultant for a maternal health network that refuses big names. A reporter asks Ethan for comment. He says, "No," and lets the network have the story. Ethan steps back from certain boards, steps forward in different ways. He listens more. He moves out of the serviced apartment and into a condo 2 floors below Maya's. They are not divorced. They are not the same. They are rewriting. Ari leaves Caldwell Holdings gently, not in a storm, but in a breakfast meeting where Ethan doesn't argue. He starts a security firm with a mandate that sounds like a mission. Dignified protection for women navigating the dangerous edges of power. He hires Preecha. He hires 2 women who were too good to be receptionists. He teaches them how to see before the world does. On a morning that smells like rain, the 4 of them, Maya, Daw, and a carrier, Ethan and Ari, walk along the river. Boats shake awake. Vendors arrange chilies like tiny comets. The city is their home, not because it forgives, but because it keeps offering futures if you look where the sun points. "Do you think she'll like the water?" Ethan asks, nodding at Daw. "She'll like everything," Maya says. "She has too many people to disappoint." "Impossible," Ari says. He touches Daw's tiny fist with one finger and feels the grip. It is strong. It is new. It is a command disguised as a request. make the world better. They make no promises to the air, because the air is busy and their promises must be carved into days. But you can feel the shape of those promises as they walk. Humility, accountability, the kind of love that learns to be lower. Above them, a billboard still shows Ethan's face from a campaign shot months ago, chin slightly up, eyes toward a horizon that fooled him. He looks at it and laughs. Maya laughs too. Ari, who has always watched the world's entrances and exits, watches the sky instead, because sometimes the point is not to see danger, but to notice safety. The city, unavoidable and kind enough, keeps going. If this story gripped you, the bag on the escalator, the lies dressed up as favors, the brother's quiet watch, the wife's hard-won voice, and the way redemption arrives like rain after months of heat, don't let it end here. Share this with someone who believes people can change, and with someone who needs reminding that power isn't the same as love. Drop a comment about the moment that hit you most, the reveal, the reckoning, or the first cry that reset the room. And if you want more tangled human stories set in real places with characters who refuse to be simple, like this, subscribe and ring the bell, so the next twist finds you right on time.